가정들과 대외적으로 목소리가 약한 사람들을 위해서 30년간 이상을 노력해 오신 분이시고요. 지금이야말로 무주택자와 공공안전을 포함하여 가장 시급한 스마트하고 상식에 맞는 공공정책을 도입할 지도자가 디스트릭에 필요한 그런 때입니다. 바로 오늘의 패널리스트인 그레이스 유가 디스트릭을 합당하게 대변하며 신뢰할 만한 서비스를 인근 지역에 초점을 두면서 펼칠 것을 많은 분들이 기대하고 있습니다. 내년 투표에서도 좋은 결과를 응원하면서 그레이스 유 패널리스트 소개합니다. 일어나주세요. 네, 환영합니다. 네, 그 다음 분은요, 이어서 리나 박인데요. 네, 리나 박은 에이시안 헬스 서비스에서 커뮤니케이션, 디벨롭먼트 앤 마케팅 분야의 최고 책임자로 일하고 있습니다. 14개국 언어로 5만여 명의 환자를 위해서 봉사하는 헬스센터인 14개국 언어로 헬스센터인 이곳에서 리나 박은 조직의 브랜드와 미션을 격상시키려는 노력을 하고 있습니다. 이 브랜드와 미션에는 브랜드의 이용 과정을 작성하는 실무 작업, 또 커뮤니케이션, 소셜미디어 이벤트와 디자인이 포함되어 있고요. 그동안 자신의 25년간의 비영리 단체에서 관리와 행정에 쏟아부었던 열정과 경험을 살려서 일을 하고 계십니다. 리나 박 패널리스트를 소개합니다. 네, 그럼 두 분이서 진행해 주시기 바랍니다.
Hi, 제 이름은 박리나인데요. 4살 때 왔으니까 한국말 잘 못하니까 죄송하는데 영어로 얘기하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
저는 3살 때 왔어요. 그래도 저도 영어로 해야겠죠. 그리고 우리 젊은 친구들이 Thank you for saying you needed English because it makes it easier for me too.
Yes, thank you.
근데 영어하고 한국말 솔직히 여기 우리 훌륭한 여성 언니분들 영어 다 하시잖아요. 그러니까 제가 영어로 하는 거에 대해서 너무나 섭섭해하지 마세요. 리나는 저보다 2살 어려서 저를 먼저 올린 거예요. 저는 변호사 일을 맡아서 하게 됐고요. 미주 앞에 변호사, 그러니까 National Asian Pacific American Bar Association 거기서 사무총장으로 5년 동안 일을 했었고요. 그 이후로 저는 한미연합회 LA에서 10년 동안 사무국장 일을 맡아서 하게 됐었어요. 그리고 이제 제가 시의원 후보로 출마하고 실패를 했습니다. 이기지를 못해서. 그래서 그 후로 제가 잠깐 St. Barnabas Senior Services 어르신들 도울 수 있는 일을 하게 됐습니다. 그리고 지금은 다시 이제 도전하는 거예요. 실패했지만 끝난 건 아니잖아요. 저는 71년생이에요. 지금 I'm 52. I'm happy to be running again as a candidate. 저는 아까 얘기한 것 같이 3살 때 이민을 온 거죠. 저희 부모님하고 한인타운으로 오게 됐어요. 저는 5살 위 오빠 한 분 있고 저는 결혼을 안 했어요. 그리고 이혼도 안 했고 애들도 없습니다. 다음 슬라이드래요. 그러니까 저희 부모님하고 제가 같이 살게 된 이유는 아버지께서 이제 스트로크가 왔었어요. 그래서 저는 미주아태 변호사 협회에서는 나오고 한미연합회에 들어간 거예요. 그때 한미연합회에 들어갔을 때 저희 부모님이 저기서 말렸어요. 무슨 여자가 한인 단체 뭐 이끌어 나가냐 안 된다 소리 걷다가 제가 한국말 못하니까 얼마나 힘들겠어요. 제가 한글로 된 신문을 읽으면 너무 힘들어요. Right? Can you imagine guys having to read a Korean newspaper to see what's going on? What a nightmare. That's what it was for me. But I persevered, and I know my parents are proud of me. They don't really say it. That's what Korean parents do, right? They don't say that they're proud of you. 근데 솔직히 우리 코엔 멤버들, 자녀들 얼마나 자랑 많이 해요. 근데 왜 애들들 앞에서는, 자녀들 앞에서는 그렇게 안 해주세요? You really have to, you know, give your children more praise in front of them, right? So we appreciate the moms that do. Dads could learn too. And so people ask, Grace, what do you do for fun? My life is revolving around doing good works. So you'll see in the far right corner my t-shirt that says vote. This was the Stop the Anti-Asian Hate rally in Koreatown. It happened to be my 50th birthday. So that's what I did on my 50th birthday. On my 40th birthday, what was I doing? Oh, I know. I was doing redistricting. 선거구 재조정 때 한인타운이 이제 단일화 시키려고 저는 그런 일을 하고 있었어요. 그래서 for my 40th birthday, I remember that's what I did. For my 30th birthday, I was at the U.S. Capitol to go ahead and try to promote more Asian American judges and Asian American staffers at the U.S. Capitol. So 이제 60대는 시의원 자리에서 무슨 좋은 일을 해야겠죠? 많이 부탁드리겠습니다.
한국말 잘하는데. I'm going to say mine in English. So a little about me and my professional side. I actually did what all Korean or most Korean Americans do, go to school for either medicine, lawyer, or an engineer. And I thought I was going to be a doctor. I went to a school called Emory University because of their research there. And so when I was there, though, I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. I actually enjoyed writing, and I loved to write. And so I began my career in journalism starting in college. I worked at CNN. I wrote for the school newspaper, and then again for the Atlanta Business Chronicle. But as I was there, one of the things being an immigrant is you don't, and as a journalist, there isn't a lot of money. And so I had to switch over to the business side, which was a very large public relations firm called Edelman, and it's a worldwide, I think it's like the #1 PR firm in the world, and I focused on high tech. But while I was there, I did not know, I felt there was something more, and I remember what I did during that time was I volunteered a lot. I volunteered at nonprofit organizations. I watched children. I worked in homeless shelters. And at that time, because we weren't raised in understanding nonprofit, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that you can actually have a career in nonprofit. Like many Korean Americans in nonprofit, it was accidental. I accidentally fell into nonprofit, and I changed careers when I had children. And so during that time, I started working at my children's private school, and that's what started my understanding of nonprofit. And just to let everyone know, I mean, I think there is something that everyone needs to know about. There was a quote that I think Dr. O talked about in terms of what Picasso said about knowing your gift and then sharing it with others, or something to that effect. And one thing that I realized is as Korean Americans, can you go back to as Korean Americans, we have to remember that we're all so different, and we need to bring differences and raise differences up, and if that includes nonprofit or anything else. And to provide a little context of nonprofit in Korea, there's about 15,000 nonprofit organizations. In the United States, there is 1.8 million nonprofit organizations. So this is a career for many people. There are many Korean Americans that are in this, but not in Korean organizations, Korean nonprofits here in the US, because there is such a lack of understanding about it. As nonprofit, the industry itself contributes $1.7 trillion to the economy. And so I'm sharing this with you, and I know there was a question about salary later, so we're gonna answer as much as we want, but I'm sharing this with you because I want, especially the young people, to consider nonprofit. There are so many Korean Americans, and we need to diversify. We need to be in office, we need to be at the White House, we need to be in nonprofit, we need to be in industries that are not so specific to the three that we think that we're supposed to be in. So wanted to bring that up. Then if you can go to the next slide. So right now, I once worked at, a lot of people know me as the executive director of the Korean American Community Foundation of San Francisco. I was the executive director there for about 4 years. I now work for Asian Health Services. So if you see the photos on the bottom, this is where we're working, and especially amongst the Korean American community, we want to start elevating Korean American voice too. But this is Asian American voices, and we serve. This organization has 500 staff. We serve about 50,000 patients total, 26 last year, and most are on most are low income. And if you look down at the photos on the left, that's Gavin Newsom, Oakland Mayor, former Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, and that's Attorney General Rob Bonta. They come to Asian Health Services. They came to Asian Health Services for this one for COVID shots. They work with Asian Health Services and many nonprofits. And that's the one thing that we have to understand, especially in the Korean community, is that we need to start to come together and elevate our voices in the United States and have a voice through collectively working together. And that's what these larger Asian American organizations have been able to do. We've been able to advocate so much for the larger Asian American community. We can do that for the Korean community as well, if we are all willing to come together collectively. And then the next slide, please. This is just some of the work that we've been doing. We have recently we've supported 100 and now I think it's like 90 victims of anti-Asian hate. Many are Korean as well. And then you can see kind of the numbers of the impact that we have in our community. The next slide, please. So this is my personal side. And so for a lot of people, for them to know is I was born in 1973, so I am 50 years old. And I have 3 grown children. I've been married to my husband for 26 years. And I can relate to what Jane Kim said, being an Asian American woman, you have to work so hard for any kind of authority because of the fact that we look and I've heard this so many times, I look very young. And so there is judgment when people see me and think, oh, what is she going to be able to talk about? What am I going to be able to talk about around leadership? I think around leadership, the things that I can talk about is the struggles that we've all gone through. If you look at this photo, it's just, I mean, my kids are all grown. And so my youngest is 19, my oldest is actually 23, she just turned 23. And when people see this photo, they see, we've been told, oh, it's like a perfect family. And what I wanted to share with you is none of us are perfect, and this is the journey that we're going on right now, is to show the imperfections of all of us, because as a Korean community, when we are showing face and we're trying to portray an image that everything is okay on the outside, we are losing out as a community. And so, as part of my journey, I wanted to just share with you where I am. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm a recovering workaholic. I am working on not being a people pleaser. I was born, I was a pastor's kid. And so being a pastor's kid and the oldest, I was taught to be a people pleaser. I was taught to care for others all the time. And that's how I was trained. And what I have learned is how debilitating that can be. The family were very, very close, but we've had a lot of struggles as a family because of the fact that my kids have had to start to relearn what it means to not always be thinking about other people, because that's what I trained them to do. And so those are the things that we're working through right now. And so that's what I'm here to do, is just to talk about what it means to be a leader. And there was earlier, Brene Brown, Dr. O, you mentioned Brene Brown, and I've been reading that too, and there's 2 things that I wanted to share. Is to be a leader is to show vulnerability, because that is so courageous to be vulnerable. The other one is to show your imperfections, because I truly believe these gifts of imperfections is actually going to bring us together as a community. And then if you could do the next slide. Oh, actually, we're just going to start answering. Well, I can share the knowledge too, because we wanted to be available to answer questions. Can you show the next slide, and then we'll just start answering questions. So I just put together a list of information because one thing that is also true is that knowledge is power. And when we know what the issues are in our community, what the issues are that as Koreans and Korean Americans we need to come together to do, this is the information that we need. One of them, and someone actually asked about salary, or one of the pre-questions was around salary, wanted to share the pay cap right now in America for women is similar to 20 years ago. For every $1 that a man is receiving in salary, women earn 0.82 cents. There was a recent article that showed that South Koreans have one of the world's lowest fertility rate, but so does 43 states in the US as well. The Census Bureau projects that by 2034, there's going to be more people who are older than 65 and than under the age of 18, and that's going to be a huge issue in our country. The Korean American community suffers from extreme economic inequality. There's the rich are very rich, the poor are very poor in this country. Nearly 1 out of 3 Americans would not have had health insurance without the Affordable Care Act. And Korean Americans have one of the highest, and I've talked about this before too, is Korean Americans have one of the highest rates of depression and suicide. And you can see the numbers here. And I've heard so many stories of people who have struggled. And one of the things that I truly believe is we need to be able to talk to one another about the struggles that we're having in order for us to be able to come together to work together towards a common good. So I think we're up for questions now. Should we ask each other the question? Okay. So we're going to make this conversational style. And if anybody has any questions, and I think there was some questions that were sent to us, we'll answer some of that.
Right, so people were like, so how much do you make? Well, how's this? I made 6 figures 30 years ago. I do not make 6 figures anymore. My brother's like, you're supposed to start making more money, not less. What are you doing taking jobs that pay you less? Well, I didn't take a job for the money. I did it because I was passionate about doing good and serving the community. And I think it's, so I don't have a house. I don't drive a fancy car. I don't own lots of jewelry. It's okay. I am not going to die with a fancy house and a fancy car. But sometimes I do wish I had a better car. I had better cars when I were in my 20s than I am now in my 50s, truthfully. But I tell young people, start investing, things that I didn't do as a young person. But then if I did that, maybe I wouldn't be where I am right now, doing community service. And really running for office is community service.
Yeah. This is where I love talking next to Grace, because you're going to hear such different answers. I started out not making hardly any money, and I'm not going to say the exact, but I'm making 6 figures. And the message around this is, in the U.S., you can have careers doing good, and you don't have to live in poverty to do good. And so there are opportunities to go into whether it's foundations, whether it's healthcare, whether it's schools. There are opportunities to go into nonprofit and to do good and to also be financially stable too.
Absolutely, you can make 200, 300, 500,000 a year working for a not-for-profit. Not a Korean American one, but the larger nonprofit world.
Yeah. Biggest success and failures.
The biggest success I had was helping the Korean American community make LAPD keep its promise to the community. After the riots, LAPD promised a police station in Koreatown. I came into KAC in 2005, 13 years had passed, no police station. I talked to the community elders and they're like, Grace, LA City doesn't have the money. And I'm like, that's not true. They built a police station in the valley. And then they're like, oh, didn't know that. And I'm like, no, we need to go demand it. And so people look at Gracie and go, she's a fighter. 왜 쟤는 저래? Right? But it's like you want me to be a fighter. You don't want someone that, oh, would you please give me a police station? Right? No, we have to go demand it. Things in America, it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You don't get what you want for your community unless you go demand it. You don't go ask nicely. It doesn't work. So it's not that I'm mean and rude and obnoxious. It's I'm demanding something. I'm passionate about that. And leadership means passion.
You want me to talk about success first, and then we talk about our failures? Okay. I think one of the biggest successes for me was when I was at KCFSF, and during that time, my vision, it was the first time that I actually saw that a vision that I could have could actually come into fruition with hard work. I used that platform actually to bring as many of the community members together as much as possible. And I know that we have some people who come to some of our convenings and have worked together on various issues. And one of the things that we did, especially during COVID, pre-COVID, I went out and actually talked to so many nonprofits, other organizations, other leaders, just having conversation without doing any asks, just getting to know people and building that trust. And I think that was one thing that was also Dr. O had also talked about, is building that trust. And never knew that COVID would hit. But when COVID hit, we were able to I was able to literally just call people and get everyone together, get high-tech companies, some people in high-tech together to talk about solutions, because the seniors in our community, they were not getting the food, the lunches that they needed during COVID. We had, there were food that was being delivered. It wasn't culturally competent. It was American food that was being delivered, and our Korean seniors were not eating them. And so, through just the working together, what a lot of the leaders did is they just started to help one another. We started what was called the Bay Area K-Coalition, and we just started helping one another. And as a foundation, the foundation was able to provide some seed funding to help build an infrastructure so that some of these nonprofits were able to now go to their county and get more money, because they could show that they could actually do the work. And we ended up providing over 100,000 lunches during COVID. And so I see that as just that building a coalition, not only building coalition, but even deeper, building bridges between the communities, I think was one of my biggest successes.
Well, that's great. So tell me about the flip side. What was a failure?
I would say the failure was also KCFSO. And I can explain why. I think I had a venture capitalist tell me this once. He said he does not invest in any entrepreneurs that have not failed at least 3 times. When you fail, in failing you learn so much. And what I will say is, when I was at KCFSF, there were so many things I didn't do right. One of them was to build for most people who don't know KCFSF, it's a very small organization. When I came in, it was only 2 years old, and I grew it from 2 years to 7 years. And during that time, there were sometimes it was just a one-man show or a 3-man show. It was very, very
One-woman
small.
show.
You're right. Okay, one woman. And during that time, what I started to do, because I was so passionate about the work and I cared so much, I went too quickly. I went too fast, too quickly. I didn't know how to pace myself. I started working 90 hours a week for 4 years, taking up all the weekends. I forgot what it meant to take care of myself. And when I told my children, and this is where I realized it came at a sacrifice for my health, and it also came at a sacrifice of my family. When my kids, as I raised them, I told them, you don't have to take those AP classes. Do what you're passionate about. It's not about filling it. You don't have to get that A. It's okay. But what they heard me say was different from what I was actually doing. They saw me say, you don't have to do this. they turn around and see me work until 2 in the morning because everything had to be perfect. And that perfection was so debilitating. And it got to the point where it actually, I spiraled. And though everything looked shiny on the outside, I was mentally struggling from lack of sleep and lack of just taking care of myself. And so I see that if I were to do it again, it would be done so differently. I think also when you're in a leadership role, a spotlight is always on you. And when a spotlight is on you, you see every flaw that you yourself have. And one of them I realized was wanting to be a people pleaser and wanting to do what everybody wanted. And I realized, you know what, I needed boundaries. And so those are the things that I learned. And so that's why I feel like I see this organization, though I still love this organization and the mission and the work. What I did realize, and I guess share this now, is that photo that I showed earlier was the photo of our family. That was also the year and the time that I actually had to tell my kids that I had breast cancer. And so that was in 2021. And it stopped me in my track. And it made me realize all these things that were happening to me, all these things that were happening and what I needed to do. And that is where I realized just the importance of caring for oneself. And so doing that, I think, just shows, like, when I thought about, like, when this happened, I actually had to think about, can I continue working at KCFSF? And I realized at that point, I had not made this sustainable for me to stay here while I was going through radiation, while I was going through my surgery. I knew I couldn't do it. And that's when I realized that I had failed in building something where I could actually continue as I was going through some of these health challenges. And so that was a very big learning for me. And as many of you know, the organization still continues, and I support the next executive director, and I love the work that they continue to do. I think stepping down was one of the best things I had to do for myself and my health and my family at that time.
Absolutely. Her failure really wasn't a failure, right? It's just a learning, and it's a step for new direction. When you put in 80, 90 hours and you're married with children, that is tough. I was able to do that because I was younger, by more than a decade, when I was doing that kind of stuff for KAC and NAPABA, but I didn't have kids. I didn't have to worry about a husband, right? So that's my life. But as I failed in my first attempt and my second attempt at City Hall, third time's a charm, so it's going to be different. The numbers are different. I'm going to win this one, and I'm going to do it with your help. Okay? I want you to know, thanks. What I've also come to realize, more so because my dad's ability to walk is very stilted. He's barely ambulatory. So when I'm able to put a picture of my parents and me at Yosemite, that's because I was able to cajole my dad into going to Yosemite with us. And we went to go watch the firefall, the Yosemite red firefall. And honestly, 실패했어요, 거기도. That was in 2022, but we didn't get the red. I only got the plain normal white. So I had to take my mother again this year. We did it in a, I made time. Like, just here, I'm here with you tonight, but I'm driving down after this, because I got to get back down to LA. And when I went to Yosemite with my mom in February of this year and got the red firefall, we did a 12-hour trip. Left in the morning, got back late at night because, Dad was at home, right? So we do this kind of stuff, and luckily I love to drive. Our failures are where we learn new things about ourselves and how to help the next generation coming up. So I know I'm definitely open to any young people who would like to hear, just like Dr. Suzio was saying, hey, send me an email. Same for me. If you have any questions about what to do as a young person going up, I'm happy to share with you. You can go to graceforla.com. You can send it to grace.e.yoo@gmail.com. Anywhere. I'm easy to find.
I think we have to close and soon. Okay, so if you can get to the slide where there's 3, that one. So I wanted to just end with this, that there's power in numbers, and this is where I'm so grateful for KOWIN, for your existence. I feel like there's so many leaders in this group, and there's so much you can do when you collectively come together. These are 3 organizations that I'm a part of. One of them is CKA, and we recently actually there was 100 of us that went to DC during that 70th anniversary with Korea and the US alliance when the president came. And it was to show DC that there were numbers, there were Korean Americans in certain there, and it was powerful. Not only for celebrating the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the alliance, but it was also powerful in that DC saw people show up. The other one is Chief, and it is for women, and this is where there's 20,000 women across the US. And one of the things we're working on is ensuring that we support one another and elevate one another, because we are so few on boards, we are so few in so many different leadership roles, and so we're coming together to support one another. And then the last is there's a gap in research in the United States. It's hard to get funding and hard to get information out when there's so few research out there. And so CARE is a collaboration where I'm an advisory board member, where we are working on ensuring that there's more Asian Americans in the research pool. So those are the things, and I just wanted to end with this because KOWIN, I know as an international group, you have so much to offer. You are all such powerful, powerful women coming together. There's so much that you can do, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what that's going to be. Do you have anything?
I just think our KOWIN network, I'm happy to be here with the Western Regional, and I'm happy to be one of the vice presidents at one of the KOWIN chapters, but I know we can work collectively to do more. We as the Korean community work collectively, and we were able to pass the North Korean Child Welfare Act back in 2013 to really work on helping orphan children in other countries where these children can possibly be adopted through the United States. So, when we work together, we accomplish things. And I can't wait to have KOWIN work on another project and do something amazing. So thank you for allowing me to join you tonight, and thank you for this opportunity.